Hey, welcome back. Today we'll talk about what to check before investing in real estate if your goal is long-term stability instead of short-term risk. This can save you thousands and protect you from the kind of financial stress that wipes people out, especially in real estate. Grab a pen and take notes. After more than 12 years in finance and investing, I've seen both sides. People who build steady wealth and people like Dave, who owned around $4 million in property on paper but went bankrupt because every unit was loaded with debt. That's why I invest differently. Here's what I'd check before ever trying to get rich in real estate the right way, without risking your future. Define your end goal. When I talk with new investors, I always start by asking what they're really aiming for: cash flow, stability, equity, or long term freedom. The point is simple: debt free real estate behaves completely differently from leveraged real estate. A cash paid property throws off predictable income. A debt heavy property only works when everything goes perfectly. Most investors skip this conversation and end up chasing deals that don't match their goals. I've worked with clients who bought rental properties thinking they wanted passive income, but what they actually needed was security. The difference matters. If your goal is cash flow, you'll pick different properties than someone building long-term equity. If you want freedom, you'll structure financing differently than someone chasing maximum appreciation. Understanding this distinction shapes everything that follows. Analysts typically look at long-term rent trends, job growth, and property use restrictions before committing. These aren't complicated checks, they're basic context, but they shape every decision you make afterward. When your goal is clear, the decisions get easier. You stop second-guessing every listing and start filtering based on what actually serves your plan. You avoid the trap of buying properties that look good on paper, but don't align with your deeper objectives. Good investors think in systems. When your goal is clear, the decisions get easier. Now let's look at the local market itself. Study your local market. I always study the local market before I even consider a property. Look at price trends, rental demand, and neighborhood direction. According to recent housing reports, price cycles can swing 15 to 20% depending on region. When you're paying cash, you want stability, not speculation. Hot deals often only make sense when debt is cheap, and that's the trap many people fall into. Cross-check data from local listings, government housing reports, and supply indicators. If prices are inflated because of investor hype, slow down. A cash investor wins by being selective. I've seen markets where rental yields looked strong on paper, but when you dug into vacancy rates and tenant turnover, the numbers fell apart. Sometimes entire neighborhoods shift within a few years based on employment changes or infrastructure projects. Understanding price trends helps you avoid the worst mistake: buying at the peak. Most people think they can time the market perfectly. They can't, but you can avoid obvious overvaluation by checking historical price data and comparing current levels to long-term averages. If prices have jumped 30% in 2 years while rents stayed flat, that's a signal. You're looking at speculation, not fundamentals. Look at employment data too. Stable job markets produce stable tenants. When major employers leave an area, rental demand collapses. When new industries move in, demand rises. These shifts don't happen overnight, which means you can track them if you're paying attention. I check local economic development reports and major employer announcements before buying in any area. When you slow down and verify each layer, risk becomes measurable, not mysterious. Once you understand the market, look at your own financial footing. Check your financial baseline. Before buying a rental, I review my personal financial position. I check debt levels, emergency reserves, and ongoing expenses. You want to know that your life is funded, with or without a tenant. Most clients I've worked with skip this step and jump straight into analyzing potential rent checks. That's backwards. Look at your savings rate, your monthly obligations, and your cash runway. According to many financial advisors, a 3 to 6 month buffer is a basic baseline. I prefer more because real estate can be unpredictable. If your personal finances are tight, adding a rental property just multiplies stress. You're not building wealth at that point, you're creating vulnerability. I've seen people buy rentals while carrying credit card debt or car loans. The rental might cash flow on paper, but their overall financial picture is fragile. One major repair or one missed rent payment, and they're scrambling. That's not investing, that's gambling. The foundation has to be solid before you add weight to it. Check your credit score too. Even if you're planning to pay cash, your credit affects insurance rates, utility deposits, and your ability to access emergency funds if needed. A strong financial baseline isn't just about having money, it's about having options. Options give you patience. Patience protects profits. A strong financial base turns real estate from risky to steady. With that foundation set, the next step is your primary home. Start with a paid-off home. I always recommend building stability first. A paid-off primary residence changes everything. You sleep better, your monthly expenses drop, and investing becomes optional, not pressure-driven. That's the position you want before buying rentals. From my own experience working with families, the ones who hold strong during economic downturns are the people with no mortgage or a very small one. The numbers are simple. When your living expenses are low, every rental becomes a bonus instead of a lifeline. You make better decisions because you're not desperate for the rental income to cover your own housing costs. I've met investors who owned 3 or 4 rental properties but still owed $200,000 on their own home. When the rentals hit rough patches, vacancies, repairs, problem tenants, they couldn't cover their personal mortgage. They ended up selling rentals at a loss just to stay afloat. The pressure forced mistakes. Contrast that with someone who owns their home outright. If a rental sits vacant for 3 months, it's annoying but not catastrophic. They have time to find the right tenant instead of accepting anyone who applies. That patience protects both cash flow and property value. You can wait for quality instead of settling for availability. Security first, investing second, it prevents emotional decisions later. Once your home base is secure, start preparing for your first rental. Save cash for your first rental. Paying cash eliminates the biggest risk in real estate, debt. No payments mean no pressure, no foreclosure risk, and no chance of becoming a motivated seller. This is where Dave's story matters. $4 million in property didn't save him because the banks owned more of it than he did. When the market shifted and his tenants stopped paying, he had no cushion. The debt crushed him. Most analysts see that debt magnifies returns only when everything goes right. But when tenants don't pay, as we saw during the pandemic and eviction moratorium, cash investors stay calm while leveraged investors panic. I watched colleagues lose properties during that period because they couldn't cover mortgage payments without rental income. Their entire strategy depended on continuous rent checks. One disruption destroyed everything. Cash-only investing also changes your negotiating position. Sellers know cash offers close faster and more reliably than financed offers. You can often negotiate better prices because you remove contingencies, and once you own the property, there's no monthly payment eating into your cash flow. Every dollar of rent minus expenses goes straight to you. Some people argue that paying cash means missing out on leverage. That's true, but leverage cuts both ways. It magnifies gains and losses. For long-term stability, I'll take predictable, debt-free income over leveraged returns every time. The math is simple. Consistent 10% returns beat occasional 30% gains followed by a total loss. Cash-only investing removes the biggest variable in the entire equation. Now let's talk about the equity position you need before buying. Follow the 50% equity rule. Before stepping into any investment property, I prefer being debt-free. But if someone insists on using a loan, I recommend having at least 50% equity. It's simple math. Higher equity means lower payments, lower risk, and more control. This single buffer prevents the fragile over-leveraged position that destroyed countless investors during market downturns. Analysts usually confirm equity ratios using lender statements and appraisals. It's a simple check that gives you a realistic picture of your exposure. During the 2008 housing crisis, investors with high equity survived. Those with 5 or 10% down lost everything. The difference wasn't luck, it was structure. 50% equity also protects you from interest rate swings. If rates rise, you're not stuck with an adjustable mortgage that doubles your payment. If property values drop, you're not underwater. You maintain control regardless of market conditions. That control is worth more than any marginal return you might gain through higher leverage. I've applied this rule to every property I've financed. Even when I could have borrowed more, I kept equity high. It slowed my portfolio growth, but it also meant I never faced foreclosure risk. Slow and steady wins, fast and leveraged crashes. High equity equals low stress. It's the quiet advantage most investors underestimate. With equity established, you can evaluate the deal itself. Run real numbers, not optimistic ones. When I run numbers on a property, I avoid best case scenarios. I check actual rent rates, recent vacancy percentages, real repair costs, and property taxes. Depending on your region, vacancy averages can run anywhere from 5 to 10%. Ignoring that leads to disappointment. During the eviction moratorium, many landlords discovered that guaranteed rent wasn't guaranteed. This is why cash investors fare better. Even with temporary losses, they aren't staring at a mortgage payment. I use conservative estimates for everything. Rent slightly below market, vacancy at 10%, maintenance at 15% of rent. These buffers protect me when reality doesn't match projections. Property taxes deserve special attention. They vary widely and can increase. I've seen properties where taxes rose 30% in 5 years, completely erasing profit margins. Check the local tax assessment schedule and historical increases. Some jurisdictions reassess annually, others reassess only when properties sell. Know the pattern before you buy. Insurance is another hidden cost. Standard landlord policies run higher than homeowner policies. If the property is in a flood zone or high crime area, costs jump even more. Get actual quotes before you buy. Don't estimate. Estimates are always wrong. Conservative math builds confidence, optimistic math builds anxiety. Once the numbers make sense, see the property in person. Walk the property yourself. I've never bought a property without seeing it personally. Photos hide problems. Videos smooth things over. Walking through gives you the truth. Layout, smell, noise, structural signals. Look at wear on floors, moisture signs, and window seals. These small clues often predict bigger repairs. From experience, most issues show up in the first 5 minutes of walking the property. Analysts call these surface indicators, things that hint at deeper problems. Peeling paint near windows suggests water intrusion, uneven floors suggest foundation issues, musty smells suggest mold. These aren't definitive diagnoses, but they tell you where to investigate further. I also check the neighborhood at different times, drive through on a weekday morning, a weekday evening, and a weekend. You'll notice noise levels, traffic patterns, and how well neighbors maintain their properties. These factors affect tenant quality and long-term values. A quiet Sunday afternoon tells you nothing about weeknight noise. Talk to neighbors if possible. They'll tell you things the seller won't. Problem renters next door, noise issues, planned developments. Local knowledge saves money. I've walked away from deals based purely on neighbor conversations that revealed issues no inspection would have caught. Your own eyes beat any brochure. After the walkthrough, check the property's structural core. Inspect structural health first. When you own rentals outright, your biggest expenses come from major components: roof, foundation, plumbing, electrical. A roof replacement can run several $1,000s depending on region and material. Plumbing fixes can vary widely. These are predictable but often overlooked. Professional inspectors use moisture meters, electrical testers, and roof surveys. You don't need to become an expert. You just need to know what to verify. Debt-free or not, these systems determine your long-term profitability. I budget for major repairs based on the age and condition of these core components. I pay for professional inspections on every property. It costs a few $100s up front, but saves thousands later. Inspectors find issues sellers didn't disclose and problems that aren't visible during walkthroughs. They also provide documentation you can use to negotiate price reductions or request repairs before closing. Pay special attention to the inspector's report sections on foundation and roof. These are the most expensive repairs. If the roof needs replacement within 5 years, factor that cost into your purchase price. If the foundation shows settling or cracks, get a structural engineer involved. Some foundation issues are cosmetic, others are catastrophic. Know the difference. A solid structure protects your time and your wallet. With structure confirmed, review the neighborhood around it. Evaluate neighborhood strength. A property's performance is tied to its surroundings. I look at employment centers, school ratings, crime patterns, and long-term development plans. According to local government data, even small changes in zoning can shift rental demand. Stable neighborhoods tend to provide consistent, predictable income, perfect for cash-based investors. Cross-check public crime reports, school district statistics, and local planning documents. These simple checks help you avoid areas that look good today but decline tomorrow. I've seen neighborhoods transform, both positively and negatively, within 5 years. The key is identifying which direction momentum is heading. School ratings matter even if you're renting to singles or couples without kids. Good schools signal stable property values. Families with children prioritize school districts, which creates consistent demand and supports long-term appreciation. Even tenants without children prefer good school districts because they know resale values hold better. Check planned infrastructure too. New highways, public transit expansions, and commercial developments all affect rental markets. Some changes boost values, others create noise and congestion that drive tenants away. I review City Planning Commission meetings and Transportation Authority reports before buying. Location isn't hype, it's the backbone of reliable rental income. Once the location makes sense, calculate true ownership costs. Calculate true ownership costs. Real estate only becomes profitable when you count every cost: repairs, vacancies, upgrades, insurance, taxes, and ongoing maintenance. Cash investors often describe the resulting income as obscene, but only because they accounted for everything up front. Most analysts use a simple principle. If a property doesn't cash flow after including all expenses, it's not a good buy. This is the kind of clarity that protects you. I run detailed spreadsheets for every property, tracking actual expenses against projections. Over time, patterns emerge. You learn which expenses were underestimated and which were overstated. Reserve funds are critical. Set aside money monthly for major repairs. Even with careful maintenance, roofs eventually need replacement, HVAC systems fail, and water heaters die. If you're not reserving funds, you're not really cash flowing. You're just delaying inevitable expenses. I also track time costs. Property management takes hours. Showing units, coordinating repairs, handling tenant issues. If you're managing properties yourself, assign a dollar value to your time. That cost matters. Some investors ignore it because they don't write a check, but time is money. If you're spending 20 hours a month managing a property that nets $500, you're earning $25 per hour. Know what your time is worth. Transparent math creates predictable income. With profitable numbers, you can protect yourself from pressure selling. Avoid becoming a motivated seller. When you don't owe anything on a property, nobody can force your hand. You don't panic sell. You don't accept lowball offers. You don't rush into bad deals. This stability is the single biggest advantage of paying cash. Debt-free investors don't get squeezed by interest rates or market cycles. Lenders track default risk closely, and reports show that low-equity owners are more likely to sell under pressure. High-equity or debt-free owners rarely fall into that category. I've held properties through downturns because I could afford to wait. Leveraged investors couldn't. They had monthly payments forcing decisions. During market corrections, cash buyers pick up properties from motivated sellers at steep discounts. You don't want to be the motivated seller, you want to be the patient buyer with cash ready when others panic. This dynamic repeats in every cycle. Overleveraged investors become distressed. Cash investors buy their properties. This advantage compounds over time. Every property you own outright strengthens your position for the next purchase. You build momentum slowly but surely. Each paid-off property generates cash that funds the next purchase. The cycle accelerates without adding risk. Control comes from ownership, not debt. In the next section, we'll talk about strategic financing and long-term management. Choose financing only when strategic. If you ever use financing, keep it small, short, and structured with a rapid payoff plan. Gradual debt payoff is safer than holding leveraged properties for decades. I've done this myself with short-term loans when the numbers made sense, but I paid them off quickly to stay in control. Most advisors compare fixed rate versus adjustable rate loans, but the bigger question is, can you pay this off fast? If not, skip the debt. I've used financing twice, both times with 15-year mortgages and aggressive extra payments. Both properties were debt-free within 10 years. That discipline kept risk manageable. Strategic financing means borrowing only when it accelerates your plan without adding unacceptable risk. For example, if you have cash for one property, but financing lets you buy two while maintaining 50% equity, That might make sense, but only if you can handle worst-case scenarios. Run the numbers assuming everything goes wrong simultaneously. Run stress tests on any financed property. What happens if rents drop 20%? What if the property sits vacant for 6 months? What if major repairs hit all at once? If the answers scare you, don't borrow. Financing should enhance security, not threaten it. Financing is a tool, not a lifestyle. Now let's talk about managing the property itself. Screen tenants carefully. A paid-off rental still needs good tenants. I check income, rental history, and references. According to many property management surveys, late payments tend to cluster among tenants without verified income or weak rental history. This simple screening protects your cash flow. It's not about being strict, it's about being smart. Reliable tenants turn rentals into easy long-term investments. I use standard applications, run credit checks, and verify employment directly with employers. I also call previous landlords, not just the current one. Current landlords sometimes give positive references just to get rid of problem tenants. Ask specific questions. Did they pay on time? Did they maintain the property? Would you rent to them again? Most landlords give honest answers when you ask directly. Listen for hesitation. If a previous landlord pauses before answering, that tells you something. Set clear expectations up front. Provide detailed lease agreements covering maintenance responsibilities, payment schedules, and property rules. Clear communication prevents most problems. I schedule annual property inspections and maintain open communication with tenants throughout their lease. Good tenants make real estate passive, bad tenants make it painful. Next, let's organize your financial tracking. Track every dollar. I keep simple systems for repairs, rent collection, reserves, and annual taxes. You can use spreadsheets or basic accounting apps. You don't need anything fancy. Analysts recommend reserving around 10% for maintenance, depending on property age. Tracking creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. I review financial reports monthly, comparing actual expenses against budgets. This habit catches problems early and helps refine future projections. Over time, you develop a sense for normal versus abnormal expenses. Separate accounts help too. I maintain dedicated checking accounts for each property, making it easy to track income and expenses without mixing personal funds. This separation also simplifies tax preparation. When everything is separated, you can generate reports instantly, keep receipts and invoices organized. You'll need them for tax deductions and for tracking property performance. Digital filing systems work well. Scan everything and back it up. I use cloud storage with automatic backups. The goal is making information accessible without effort. Organized investors stay profitable. Finally, review your overall position once a year. Review your portfolio annually. Every year I reassess equity, rent trends, property condition, and overall risk. Some investors hold forever. Some slowly consolidate. There's no wrong answer, just data-driven choices. The goal is to make sure your properties are serving your long-term plan instead of becoming another Dave-style cautionary tale. Look at market changes, new regulations, and your personal goals. Adjust as needed. I've sold properties that no longer fit my strategy and bought others that aligned better with where I'm headed. Markets change, goals change, your portfolio should change with them. Annual reviews also reveal opportunities. Maybe a property has appreciated enough to sell and buy 2 smaller units. Maybe rental rates have risen enough to justify upgrades. Maybe it's time to refinance short-term debt. These decisions only become clear when you step back and review the entire picture. Track your overall portfolio performance, not just individual properties. Sometimes one property underperforms, but your total returns remain strong. Context matters. 1 weak property in a portfolio of 10 is manageable. 1 weak property when you only own 2 is a serious problem. Long-term wealth is built through quiet, consistent adjustments. Closing thoughts. Real estate wealth isn't built through speculation or leverage. It's built through verification, patience, and disciplined execution. Every number matters. Every inspection reveals truth. Every decision compounds over time. Dave's story reminds us that paper wealth means nothing without equity. $4 million in property value couldn't save him because debt owned more than he did. The strongest investors are the ones who never become motivated sellers, who weather downturns calmly, who build from security rather than pressure. This approach takes longer. You won't buy 10 properties in 2 years, you won't impress people with leverage ratios, but you'll sleep well, maintain control, and build wealth that can't be taken away. You'll make decisions from strength instead of desperation. The strongest portfolios aren't built in excitement, they're built in confirmation. Every number, every note is a piece of a longer story, steady, patient, and true.